ever heard the saying, I wouldn't touch that with a 6-foot pole? We really didn't think that would appeal to distancing from our loved ones, our neighbors, our friends, our peers. But here we are, October of 2020, and the reality still sticks in. So this is Pink Glue, October 20th, 2020, episode number 143. DOJ steps up, Google Antitrust. Now, this is really interesting. How much can you use that 6-foot pole to poke a bear and poke a bear and poke a bear until finally the bear snaps back? Here we go. Justice Department files landmark antitrust case against Google. This is on cron.com, and it is authored by Michael Basamu and Marcy Gordon, Associated Press. The date was today. Actually, when I pulled this up, it had been, I think, 58 minutes ago that this had been released. So this is Justice Department files landmark antitrust case against Google. Let's look into this. Washington AP. The Justice Department on Tuesday sued Google for antitrust violations, alleging that it abused its dominance in online search and advertising to stifle competition and harm consumers. Now, we already saw this in the Microsoft suit that came out years before. However, this is even deeper, broader, and more frightening. I'll continue. The lawsuit marks the government's most significant attempt to protect competition since its groundbreaking case against, here we go, Microsoft more than 20 years ago. It could be an opening salvo ahead of other major government antitrust actions, given ongoing investigations of major tech companies, including Apple, Amazon, Facebook, at both the Justice Department and FTC, Federal Trade Commission. Now, I might point out, we've had a lot of conversations, news, a lot going around with Twitter, Facebook, and Google. But you notice that although Amazon will peek its head up every once in a while, it usually has to do with labor disputes and payment to employees. But it's really been rather quiet. But you know who's been very, very silent? Apple. It'll be interesting when it's their turn. We did just have the latest product release from Apple, which was wholly disappointing. Essentially, they took an old iPhone 4 and 5 and presented it as their iPhone 12. We'll see if they actually come out with an iPhone 13 or skip on to 14. But of course, you can read the reviews on that. So I continue here. Google is the gateway to the internet and a search advertising behemoth. So I'm stopping again. You know that even if you go to DuckDuckGo or Firefox or many other sites, Google is usually the default search engine in the background. Now, this is a reminder of what Yahoo used to do. Yahoo created a bug, essentially, and what it would show up in different ads. It would show up if you use maybe Yahoo email, and if clicked on or accessed, all of a sudden it would download itself into your computer and place itself as the default search engine. And that's how Yahoo became so big. These tech companies are not huge because they follow the rules. They walk into the gray area, push the edges, and they keep pushing the gray area further. So Google has become the largest internet and search engine. Now, one guess what the second largest and internet search engine is today? Yep, you got it, YouTube. Once again, Google. So number 1 and 2 spots are held right here. They control what you see, they control how you see it, and they also control what you don't see. And they control manipulation of emotions through the day based on what they end up showing you or not showing you. So I'm continuing with the same paragraph here. Google is the gateway to the internet and a search advertising behemoth. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Jeff Rosen told reporters, wow, when did Jeff become USDA? He's been California forever. I've got to look that one up. Okay, it has maintained its monopoly power through exclusionary practices that are harmful to competition. Antitrust cases in the technology industry have to move quickly, he said. Otherwise, we could lose the next wave of innovation Now, how quickly are we talking about? Again, the suit that they referenced here, which was the top one that came to mind for me, was 20 years ago. Let's not move at breaking speed here. This is a big challenge. There was a commentary by an individual that how can you expect people that don't know how to even update the time on their iPhone to start regulating these industries? Now, on top of that, as my expertise is digital security and autonomous vehicles specifically, we are far off from having any understanding of what the government regulators are going to do. Unfortunately, it's truly going to be the case that they will follow behind lawsuits and have to make regulations after the fact based on what negotiations that they can appease to move forward in the tech space. That's going to be a whopper. Okay, lawmakers and consumer advocates have long accused Google, whose corporate parent is Alphabet, has a market value just over $1 trillion, of abusing its dominance in online search and advertising to stifle competition and to boost its profits. I'm pausing here. Advertising. For those of you who don't have current Google AdSense or any of the advertising portals within Google, Google is not free, right? It makes its money primarily in two different directions. And now, of course, it gets government funding and grants, but I'm not going there right now for the details. But two main directions. One, it sells advertisements. So the more it can draw your eyeballs onto the site, the more it can charge for advertisers to meet your eyeballs to charge fees. The second is they gather every single piece of data that you have that they can grasp, package, and sell out the back end. So this is how they're making billions of dollars. So even when the world shuts down, they're still advertising. And there is no lack of advertisers. If one person pulls money, another one gladly steps in. And they do this via something called digital marketing arbitrage. And you can Google that for more information. But again, it's digital marketing arbitrage. And essentially that means that, let's say I am X motor company and I want to place an advertisement. So I go in and say the type of the location that I want to target, the age of the people, the income level, whatever prospects you want to do your target marketing to. And then I see who else is already advertising in that space. And Google does me the favor of selling X motors to A, B, and C motors. And because they're selling the targeted of who I am or my marketing effort off to others, it now raises the price that I need to pay in order to get in the door. And when somebody searches X Motors, it actually goes to me. Now, how do you know this? If you ever go to Google and or YouTube and you type in the exact keywords of the company you're looking for, and it's redirected somewhere else, you'll look at the top and it'll say ad or advertisement. And that's because they paid more money than the company that you are searching for, and your company got searched further down the list. Now, the main industry that this happens in is travel industry. So, for instance, if you type in you want to go to X hotel, you can usually find it on the second or third page because you've got all the different travel marketing companies that come up first because they're marketers. They grab money from these companies and other companies, pool the money and get further up on the list. But unfortunately, they're also taking a cut of that night stay that you would have paid directly to the company. And if there's a challenge or a change of dates, you have to deal with a third party rather than just dealing with the front desk. So my advice is whenever booking a hotel room, go directly to the source. You can often mention what you saw online as far as the other advertising prices, and they'll 90% of the time give you the discounted rate because they'd rather have the money directly. And then if there's a cancellation issue, you're dealing with them instead of a third party. So let me continue here. Critics contend that multi-billion-dollar fines and mandated changes in Google's practices imposed by European regulators in recent years weren't severe enough, and that structural changes are needed for Google to change its conduct. I pause again here. Why did we have to wait for it to go through the European regulators, their trials, and their unraveling? Why haven't we stepped up the plate for a company that is headquartered in our own backyard because we don't want to expose the truth of what's going on. So instead, they've parlayed over in Europe, who has very strict, I think it was the GDPR, and I might have that confused right now, but I think the GDPR restricts what companies can gather. And so, for instance, if you were to buy an Audi in Europe, you would have to, because Audis are smart cars, correct? You would have to, in order to use that car, acknowledge that you know your information is being gathered and to what level you will allow it to be shared. So for instance, if you know it's being gathered, you have to sign and initial that before you can take delivery of the car. But then it gets a click down deeper. What part of the data can be shared? Any videos inside the car, any videos outside the car, any location information, any speedometer information. You have to sign off on each one that you are allowing. You are literally opting in, not a default opting out that you have to go and find. Now this, as you know, is very different than what we have in the United States. In the United States, you have an opt-out if you can, but usually it's a opt-out, meaning you don't get to use it anymore. So there used to be an opportunity. Let's say I wanted to use a cell phone. I could go into the cell phone company and pay my bill, and I could handwrite in the contract that I am opting out, or that there's restrictions, or you can't handwrite anything anymore. It's already pre-programmed with the technology. You don't even get a fake signature on there. They just stamp it that you've touched it. So as we move forward, Europe has already not only tightened regulations for PII, personal information, but they're taking action and suing these companies for billions of dollars. And the statement here is that was not severe enough. Now we need to step in. But why did we step in before? And this administration has been threatened for 3.5 years to step in. Why at the last moment are we doing so? I really think it has to do with poking the bear. But let's continue here. Google responded immediately via tweet. Today's lawsuit by the Department of Justice is deeply flawed. People use Google because they choose to, not because they're forced to, or because they can't find alternatives. Well, you know what? When you are bloatware on every computer and you embed yourself in every other search engine front end, you are the back end, and you are the chosen Gmail service for even government emails. You take money from intelligence agencies. You're now embedded in school systems. I mean, I can just go on and on and on and on. This is what you get. It is deeply flawed, though, I have to agree. And I very much hope that the Department of Justice can pull this together and make sure that it creates fairness. And I don't mean fairness necessarily for Google. So this case was filed in federal court in Washington, D.C. It alleges that Google uses billions of dollars collected from advertisers to pay phone manufacturers to ensure Google is the default search engine on browsers. 11 states, all with Republican attorneys generals, joined the federal government in the lawsuit. But several other states demurred. The Attorney General of New York, Colorado, Iowa, Nebraska, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Utah released a statement Monday stating they have not concluded their investigation into Google and would want to consolidate their case with the DOJ's if they decide to file. This is a lack of priority and focus. It's a bipartisan statement, said spokesman Fabian Levy of the New York State Attorney General's office. There's things that still need to be fleshed out, basically. Politics is what needs to be fleshed out. Okay, I continue. President Donald Trump's administration has long had Google in its sights. One of Trump's top economic advisors said 2 years ago that the White House was considering whether Google searches should be subject to government regulation. Trump has often criticized Google, recycling unfounded claims by conservatives that the search giant is biased against conservatives and suppresses their viewpoints, interferes with U.S. elections, and prefers working with the Chinese military over the Pentagon. Rosen told reporters that allegations of anti-conservative bias are a totally separate set of concerns from the issue of competition. The Justice Department isn't seeking specific changes in Google's structure, but it asked the court to order structural relief as needed to remedy any anti-competitive harm. That opens the door to possible fundamental changes such as a spin-off of the company's Chrome browser. Sally Hubbard, an antitrust expert who runs enforcement strategy at the Open Markets Institute, said it was a welcome surprise to see the Justice Department's openness to the possibility of structurally breaking up Google, not just imposing conditions on its behavior as what has happened in Europe. Traditionally, Republicans are hesitant to speak of breakups, she said. Personally, I'll be very disappointed if I see a settlement. Google has shown it won't adhere to any behavioral conditions. She's right. If a settlement is agreed to, Google has mastered law. They have the highest priced attorneys and law firms on their side, and the lowest paid as well. They go for boutique companies in order to just make sure that they, well, that's a whole nother line, but yes, they're wide and deep to make sure that lawsuit stops and attorneys cannot represent due to conflict of interest that they've created. But what Google does is kick the can as far as it can. So for instance, if they have 30 days to respond, they'll wait till the last moment of the 30th day and say that they need more time. And you either grant more time or you don't get the information. So 99 times out of 100, it's granted more time, and they kick the can and kick the can and kick the can, and they shuffle staff so it's harder to gather information, and then they barrage with massive amounts of data bearing. They've learned from the government very, very well. They play the game. So I really hope that Jeff Rosen in this case can pull it together and move forward based on his past cases. I hope he's not leading this one. So here we go. Google controls about 90% of global web searches. This is global. The company has been bracing for the government's actions and is expected to fiercely oppose any attempt to force it to spin off its services into a separate business. You know, I've got to disagree there because, again, Google's parent company is Alphabet, and on the wall at Alphabet is A, B, C. It is literally the American alphabet. And under each letter is another company that it's spun up. So when we get down to the letter T, guess what's there? You're correct. Now, if you go down to the letter Y, guess what's there? You're correct again, we've got YouTube. If you go down to W, we've got Waymo, their autonomous vehicle section. If they spin it off, I'm fully convinced it will still be underneath the Alphabet umbrella, which isn't truly a breakup at all, as this is the direction that they've already set up for themselves. They've braced. The company vowed to defend itself in court against a deeply flawed case that relies on dubious legal arguments. Barring a settlement, a trial would likely begin late next year or in 2022. And again, they'll push the can as far down the road as possible. But again, why is a settlement not optimal? A settlement means a payout. It's essentially, in all terms, bribery. So they would pay a fee, and that fee goes to the government. So it just becomes a voluntary tax, for lack of a better word, that doesn't support anybody who actually uses the platform or has paid into the marketing or advertising or been manipulated or had their data sold. It's just a government tax. But the biggest issue with a settlement is it doesn't go to trial. And without trial, there aren't depositions, there aren't discovery, all the documents are not revealed. What we're seeking here are open the books, let's see the truth, because there's so much more going on here. And by bringing a case like this to trial, we're also going to see a lot more about the algorithms that Google uses and how it's been manipulating the platform in the case of electoral fraud. So it'll just open it. So with my experience in knowing Google, they're going to do all they can to pay a fee to get out of jail. is essentially what's going to happen here. I really hope the government sticks to its guns and move forward. So here we go. The company based in Mountain View, California has long denied the claims of unfair competition. Google argues that although its businesses are large, they are useful and beneficial to consumers. It maintains that its services face ample competition and have unleashed innovations that help people manage their lives. Pausing here again. How many of you knew that the fully autonomous Firefox has received billions of dollars of funding from Google and has bleeded over into the culture, the algorithm, and the searches? That's just one example. I continue. Most of Google's services are offered for free in exchange for personal information that helps it sell ads. Google insists that it holds no special power forcing people to use its free services or preventing them from going elsewhere. I pause again here. Now, I'm also in agreement with this statement for the fact that put your money where your mouth is. Vote by using your dollar, especially in an electoral year where we're questioning whether or not our vote will count. It is really important when you're using your dollar in the community to put it towards something you want to further and not put it towards something you want to go away. The dollar is what drives economy and drives existence for companies. However, in this case, if we step back and we look at Google and Facebook as examples, they were not the only horses in the race. So there's a number of companies that started up, a number of organizations that ran forward, and these just ran the farthest. It was once stated that Google won because it knew how to market better than any other company. They know how to do the manipulation, and thus the term digital marketing arbitrage is really a high-level term for a high-level service that they're gaining. So what we look at is, again, there are many other search engines. As we've looked since the beginning of the internet and we've come up to this point, there's many before Google. However, Google ran the fastest, the farthest, and used the best expertise of marketing in order to gain the eyes of the intelligence agency who figured that they could benefit the most from this. So we've got this now massive conglomerate that has spun out many different businesses already from it while it's capturing and controlling the majority of searches on the internet on a global basis. But this is where I diverge. I don't have to sign into Google. That's not somebody I'm being forced to do. However, as a business person, you have to be where the people are. And because companies like Google and Apple and Facebook and Amazon are constantly buying out other businesses, or as we have seen, they are forcing out a business by redirecting traffic, they are controlling what opportunities we have to look elsewhere. And I'm sure as we move forward, we're going to find out that either by Google's buying practices, which would be acquisition, obviously mergers would fit into that as well, as usually M&A is together, but a slightly different concept. We're going to see the manipulation and throttling versus suspension of other opportunities for us to look at. So no, in the case of this private company being a choice for us, there really is not much of another choice if you want to do business. And because they've made it so easy and trained even school children all the way up to use the platform, which is the same thing that Steve Jobs did with the Apple and the Mac and moving up to get integration of his Apple product. It's a manipulation of the culture at an early age so that as they grow into an organization or a company, they bring those products with them. So no, with the level of manipulation that's occurred, forcing out other options, there needs to be changes. I'm just not sure that this is the most effective path. So I continue here. In a Tuesday presentation with a handful of reporters, Google argued that its services have helped hold down the prices of smartphones and that consumers can easily switch away from services like Google Search, even if it's a default option on smartphones and in some internet browsers. Okay, so how many people know how to get rid of Google all the way on their phone? How many people know how to put a new browser on their phone? Okay, there's a good percentage. But then what if your default search or your default tool is Google? You need a Google account really to watch YouTube, although there's some ways you can still get around that. They're tightening down. And you need a Gmail account. When people use Google Drive or any of these, they need to be able to tie into your Google in order for you to view the equipment. So even, I'm sorry, the documents. So even if you don't use one on a day-to-day base, more than likely is you probably have some level of a Google account. Many nonprofits use Google, so it may not even say that it's Google, and yet it's actually has a direct URL overlay. And so before the .com could be the name of the nonprofit, or before the .org or whatever it is, and yet the back end is Google. So what does this mean? It's a level of control even on the phones. Right now, you can get 1 to 2 phones. There had been 3 in the race. We, of course, were wondering whether or not Microsoft would run ahead, and they've faltered horribly on the phone. So we have an iPhone or an Android phone. And again, Android is basically Google. Now, I did an episode earlier that pointed out that while traveling this summer on a military base with children, my phone, Google itself scraped my own pictures off of my phone in a lockdown mode and posted those online, and got, at that point, almost 40,000 views. Google did not have any approved access. Now, I'm sure somewhere in the terms and conditions, they had changed it. And I'll also point out that when terms and conditions change, you're typically notified. However, it resets back to their favor. So let's say that you've gone down and tightened down your account, and then all of a sudden it comes up that they're going to do a term and condition change. You go back in and all your settings are gone. They don't leave your settings. They override them, make sure they have access to everything until the point that you go back in and accept it. So during that window of time, it's fair game. There is no fair game here. I'm going to continue here with the next paragraph. A recent report from a House Judiciary Subcommittee following a year-long investigation into big tech's market dominance concluded that Google has monopoly power in the market for search. It said the company established its position in several markets through acquisition. Here we go. Snapping up successful technologies that other businesses had developed, buying an estimated 260 companies in 20 years. Red flag. The Democratic congressman who led the investigation called Tuesday's action long overdue, that said it's important for the Justice Department to look beyond Google's search business. Yes, it is. There's a lot hiding under those covers. It is critical that the Justice Department's lawsuit focuses on Google's monopolization of search and search advertising, while also targeting the anti-competitive business practices of Google, is using to leverage this monopoly into other areas, such as maps, browsers, video, and voice assistants. Representative David Sickling of Rhode Island said in a statement, I'm going to pause here again. About 2 years ago, Google decided they need to get more funds into their Google Maps. So you might have noticed they were doing trials, which have now been fully implemented. When you were driving down the road and you had directions on, you might have heard before, please turn left at, and it would name the street. And as you recall from the old TomToms, naming the streets became a big deal versus just turn left here. But so we got to the point where it would name the street. Well, instead, there were 3 main companies who first bought into this program and advertised. So instead of being told to turn left on XYZ Street, you were all of a sudden told, turn left at the Panda Express, Wells Fargo, or Citibank were the 3 who advertised. And it wouldn't be once. All of a sudden, you heard that command 3 times. Please turn left at the X restaurant. Please turn left at the X restaurant. Please turn left at the X restaurant. There was a reiteration here embedded into your daily of focusing on on driving behavior, because you would also note that the restaurant was always set to come out at specific times around lunch and dinner. The banking was at specific times, and it was sent to direct people based on their location, if proximity, and also time of day and how they run their errands. So it could be argued that, oh, we're just helping people out. Are you really now? Okay, let me continue here. The Justice Department filed the strongest suit they have, said Columbia law professor Tim Wu, who called it almost a carbon copy of the government's 1998 lawsuit against Microsoft. He said via email that the U.S. government has a decent chance of winning. However, the likely remedies, for example, knock it off, no more making Google the default, are not particularly likely to transform the broader tech ecosystem. Other advocates, however, said the Justice Department's timing, it's only 2 weeks to Election Day, smacked of politics. The government's narrow focus and alienation of the bipartisan state attorney generals is evidence of an unserious approach driven by politics and is likely to result in nothing more than a choreographed slap on the wrist for Google. Alex Harmon, a competition policy advocate at Public Citizen, said in a statement, I've got to agree, this definitely has to do with politics, but seeing the history of the party that's pushing this, I really think it's more because of the silencing that's occurred that the timing is now. The argument for reining in Google has gathered force as the company stretched far beyond its 1998 roots as a search engine governed by the motto, "Don't be evil." Now, I'll point out again, it was May of 2018, and I believe it was specifically May 17th of 2018, where Google decided to get rid of this value statement. It is no longer in the cultural goals. It's since grown into a diversified Goliath with online tentacles that scoop up personal data from billions of people via services ranging from search, video, and maps to smartphone software. That data helps feed the advertising machine that has turned Google into its behemoth. The company owns the leading web browser in Chrome, the world's largest smartphone operating system in Android, and the top video site in YouTube, and the most popular digital mapping system. Some critics have singled out YouTube and Android as among Google businesses that should be considered for divestiture. With only 2 weeks to Election Day, the Trump Justice Department is taking bold action against Google on an issue of rare bipartisan agreement. Republicans and Democrats have accelerated their criticism of big tech in recent months, although sometimes for different reasons. It's unclear what the status of the government suit against Google would be if Joe Biden administration were to take over next year. The Justice Department sought support for its suit from states across the country that share concerns about Google's conduct. A bipartisan coalition of 50 U.S. states and territories, led by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, announced a year ago they were investigating Google's business practices, citing potential monopolistic behavior. Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, South Carolina, and Texas joined the Justice Department lawsuit. So again, this was presented by AP Technology writers, Mike Lidka in San Ramon, California, Matt O'Brien in Providence, Rhode Island, and Frank Bajak in Boston. So I wanted to just kick this off. This is serious, but I'm fully expecting a settlement. And I don't think the settlement will be in your best interest or my best interest. But it's one to watch as we move forward. Okay, here we go. We have Google Chrome retains your site data from Google and YouTube, even when you ask it to cover your tracks. This is on businessinsider.com. This was posted, it says 10 hours ago, by Isabel Ashford Hamilton. And it says Google Chrome's optional auto delete feature for cookies and site data doesn't affect data attached to google.com or YouTube, the register reports. Google says it's the result of a fixable bug. No, that is not a bug. Rather than a case of a tech giant giving itself away to continue tracking privacy-minded users. Okay, let's give them the benefit of a doubt. If it's a bug, then they've been called on it, should have been fixed already. It's not a bug. We are aware of a bug in Chrome that is impacting how cookies are cleared on some first-party Google websites. We are investigating the issue and plan to roll out a fix in the coming days, a spokesperson said. Now we all know that spokespeople are never part of the engineering group or the R&D group or they're always tied to a combination of legal and HR and then spun around that marketing. This is who creates the statements. These aren't the individuals who dig down deep, roll up their sleeves and write the code. These are just a way to spin the information. And here it gives credit to programmer Jeff Johnson was the first to spot the bug. Yes. A Google Chrome feature that lets users guard their privacy by deleting personal data is borrowing data from two websites, Google and YouTube. Yeah, I'm not going to read this further, but of course we have a fix here. To fix this manually, Johnson set Chrome to specifically delete Google and YouTube data by adding them to sites that can never use cookies in this setting. A Google spokesperson told the Register this was the result of a bug and not Google giving itself a way to take over the privacy. So there you go. It's another known hack that has been taking your data, as if the outright terms and conditions way of taking your data isn't enough. So here we go. This one came out October 16th, 2020, so 4 days ago. This is on activistpost.com, and the author is Dan Hicks, independent media, Josh Sigurdson. And the title is Massive YouTube Purge Takes Out the Truth, Community's Finest in Prep for Election and COVID Second Wave. So as you all know, this was on the 16th, but on October 15th, we had a just disastrous purge at the hands of YouTube, where anybody who had YouTube and Twitter, and I believe Facebook was included in this as well, anybody who had retweeted, resent, covered in any way the Biden emails that was leaked by the New York, I believe it was the New York Post. I don't think it was the Times, I think it was the Post. Without any warning whatsoever, and many of which expressed that they had not even had any strikes on their account, were taken down. But you know it wasn't surprising? These individuals also said that this was not a surprise. They had fully prepared for the violation of their First Amendment right and already had other sites picked up and ways to redirect traffic. How is it that we live in a world where our First Amendment right is taken down, we know to prepare for it, and yet we are still forced to use the same platform because that is basically where the masses are gathering? There are huge implications here. Now, very quietly in different counties around the United States, specifically in the county where Mountain View is held, which is Santa Clara County, they've had a series of ongoing lawsuits against Google for these very purposes, and yet none of those have ever hit the news. Even when I sat there in the courtroom and listened, there is no covering of that day's news cycle. It's squashed because, again, as we've learned, mainstream media, the entertainment industry, and social media sites are all one and the same. So this massive purge took them offline. It's a huge loss to the community, but right now YouTube is playing whack-a-mole. Because we knew this was happening, so many individuals stepped up behind them and have created a whole nother path to merge onto the truth. So this is information warfare. It's a violation of the First Amendment, and I fully believe that this poking of the bear raised enough eyebrows to finally get the Department of Justice to start filing. So what does it mean, antitrust laws? Here's a link to the Federal Trade Commission protecting America's consumers. And I'm going to just read the opener here, but I'm going to put the link for you to dig in deeper if you do want to know the legal background. Congress passed the first antitrust law, the Sherman Act, in 1890 as a comprehensive charter of economic liberty aimed at preserving free and unfettered competition as the rule of trade. In 1914, Congress passed two additional antitrust laws, the Federal Trade Commission Act, which created the FTC, and the Clayton Act. With some revisions, these are the three core federal antitrust laws still in effect today. So if you want to dig deeper and learn about those, again, this link will be down below. So here's another interesting article that came up. Let's see if we can relate this down. This is the NewYorkTimes.com. This came out on the 13th. So this was about a week ago. And it says Google employees are free to speak up, except on antitrust. A company operating in the shadow of government regulators has some very particular rules about what workers can and cannot say. So remember, Google was one of those open campuses. It was very much like graduating from a university. Many people from the university actually were beyond any kind of a BA or a BS degree. In fact, for many, many years, Google only hired engineers. And as they've grown and expanded, they would hire PhDs. And so people are very used to that open campus, roaming around, dorm-like structure, having everything provided for. And this is what Google offers. As a Google employee, your badge lets you into all of their buildings. You have free bicycles to get around. They have cars to drive you around. They have also their Waymo service, which services their own employees, and that's the autonomous vehicle program. They call it dog food when their own employees are asked to use these demo services or product testing. So when you hear the food, dog food, that's what it relates to, eating their own product or service. There's the whole buildings that have slides or arcades. There's gyms on most of the sites, full workout facilities with physical trainers. There's sleeping pods. They make it as close to an extension of a university as possible. They also have delis, food places, what I like to refer to as a quick martyr 7-Eleven, where you can go in and grab and go anything you want, from water to juices to, they have rolled out sodas, and most of the food they put in there would be something like nuts and healthy alternatives, apples, oranges, bananas. They've done a great job with that, but they always have jars in the corner that have special treats if you want that extra sugar kick, but they make you go the extra step to take off the lid, just like mom is watching. And whole refrigerators full of food. There's no payment. You just get to walk in and take what you need for the day. They also have food trucks. Now, food trucks is really a big deal, as we've seen, but Google owns these food trucks. The employees eat for free from these food trucks, and they're developing a whole nother level of business from controlling restaurant structure, which would have gone to companies in the surrounding area, but instead they eat on campus, and these food trucks come in as well. So this particular article is by Daisuke Wakabayashi, and this was published on October 13th, but the reason it came up for me is it was updated today. So this was from Oakland, California. Google employees are not shy about speaking up. In the last few years, they have openly confronted the company about building a censored search engine in China, the handling of sexual harassment claims, and its work with the Pentagon on artificial intelligence technology for weapons. But there's one subject that employees avoid at all costs, antitrust. They don't address it in emails. They don't bring it up in big company meetings. They are regularly reminded that Google doesn't crush, kill, hurt, or block any competition. And if you hope to land an executive job at the internet company, do not bring up the A word in the interview process. As the Justice Department, a coalition of state attorneys general, and a congressional subcommittee have investigated Google for monopoly behavior over the last year, there has been little decision internally about antitrust concerns. Now, as the department prepares to file a lawsuit against the company, the usual forums where Google employees debate anything and everything have been startlingly subdued about what may be existential threat to it. That's because Google's leaders have made it clear that antitrust is not a topic to be trifled with. In compliance courses, employees of the Silicon Valley giant are taught what to say about it and how to say it. The legal department is looped into even innocuous emails to apply attorney-client privilege, another layer of protection from prying regulators. And while there is no written policy banning discussion of antitrust, a former executive recalled coming down like a ton of bricks on an employee who was who wrote flippantly about the antitrust concerns. So I pause here. What are they afraid of? What are they locking down over? They know this is big. They knew the wave was coming in. What more are we going to see than what we already know? What we already know is deep and dirty. So it's a lot worse than we can even imagine. I continue. The caution is not limited to employees. After Google interviewed a candidate for an executive job last year, that person sent a follow-up email to Sundar Pichai, the company's chief executive. In the email, the candidate asked about the antitrust implications of a potential merger. According to two people familiar with the incident, the antitrust question to Mr. Pichai was seen as inappropriate, raising questions about the candidate's judgment, the people said. While it did not disqualify the candidate, it was seen as negative for the person's job prospects. All of this has contributed to an unspoken understanding among Google employees that it is not wise to address the antitrust issues openly, said 6 current and former employees who declined to be identified because they were not permitted to talk publicly or feared retaliation. It's seen as something you don't talk about because there is no productive conversation associating Google with the word monopoly, said Jack Polson, a Google research scientist who left the company in 2018 and now works at a tech ethics nonprofit. The reality is that Googlers are well paid, and that's because of the monopoly. In effect, the monopoly is on their side. I'm going to pause here again, too. In an episode yesterday, I also discussed the H-1B visa play into this. If you've got individuals from another country who want to stay here, they have to keep their mouths shut. And it's an easy way to get excellently educated talent. Pay them very well. I don't see diminished salaries there, but I certainly see diminished communication. Fear is big from the tech companies. Julie Tararo McAllister, a Google spokeswoman, said the company had standard competition law compliance trainings like most big companies. We ask our employees to compete fairly and build great products rather than focus or opine on competitors, she added. And I will give them credit for that. When I worked with Google, it was made very clear that you never talk negatively about any competitor. And that was really brought in from the beginning. But that's the peon level. That's not what happens at the executive level through M&As. And again, she's a spokesperson. This is a combination of HR, legal, and marketing. So let's continue here. Some employees said the caution around antitrust was a byproduct of Google spending most of the last decade fighting antitrust cases around the world. They said a 2-year investigation by the FTC, which decided in 2013 not to bring a case against Google, was the turning point that made the company more aware of regulatory risk. Now, again, I'd like to know what kind of settlement occurred to not bring suit, what kind of payments were made in the form of, once again, bribery and a quote-unquote voluntary tax. It obviously hasn't curbed, because between 2013 and 2020, we've seen immense growth. It has not curtailed. Google is now extremely careful about what it puts in emails and company documents and considers the antitrust implications of its business deals and strategy. One former executive said that after the FTC started its investigation, the company determined that acquisitions to bolster its dominant search business, such as its 2010 purchase of ITA Software, a flight information company, were now off the table. William Fitzgerald, a former policy and communications manager who left Google in 2018, said that while his policy team had discussed antitrust strategy ad nauseum, it hadn't been a topic widely talked about among the broader workforce. The direction from the top was to focus on your day job, said Mr. Fitzgerald, who now runs the Worker Agency, a strategic advocacy firm. Some Google employees said they didn't talk about antitrust at work because they didn't care about it. One said it was not a meaningful part of their day-to-day jobs. Another said there were so many reports of antitrust investigations about Google in different countries that it all became white noise. Google said that based on its internal data, employees were interested in antitrust issues and did not raise them up at company events. Here we have Time's Up Tech, workers' rights or women's rights. So there's quite a bit going on here. And again, I'll leave the link so that you can grab it. I kept reading this one because, again, this is on the New York Times, but I really have to give kudos to this writer. I found this to be a great relief from what I'm typically finding in journalism today. There aren't multiple sources pulled. There aren't different viewpoints. There aren't different sides of the story. There aren't even individuals who are in the path of change being interviewed. So kudos, great job here. Now, what else do we have? This is from, again, a week ago, and this is on Forbes, October 13th, and this was by Clyde Wayne Cruz. And let's see here, how the antitrust inquiry into Google can result in corporate welfare for competitors. Okay, let's see this one. And it looks like they even have it powered here if you want to listen to the article, but I'm just going to read the opener here. There's a lot of big government and big business collaboration in the United States. Many great endeavors of the day, from artificial intelligence to infrastructure to smart cities to space commercialization, are dominated by partnerships with governments rather than free enterprise. When that happens, it can be illegal to compete against the business, government combined, or franchising. This should not be a surprise. There's obviously a lot of regulation and intervention through the economy. Business often wants regulation, which might not be about elevating the public good so much as about disadvantaging rivals and snagging their customers, creating artificial scarcity, or otherwise doing whatever it takes to transfer wealth rather than create it anew by laissez-faire competition. Academic economists tried hard but never came up with a better term than rent-seeking for this phenomenon. As a policy concern, rent-seeking has been studied to death, but keeps happening for some reason. Antitrust, now 130 years old, is, in my view, also primarily a form of illicit government wealth transfer, corporate welfare, rather than consumer protection. And this is what I talk about. When settlements occur, there's massive amounts of money transferred, and it's a handshake that brings the companies closer, not further, from government lobbyists and counterparts and decision makers. I continue. There are examples galore, but the latest prominent inaction iteration is the U.S. Department of Justice investigation into Google and its assorted alleged monopolies in advertising, search, or whatever else the enforcers zero in on. The Google case and potential other ones against big tech are particularly ominous because the House Judiciary Committee, majority Democratic, also wants to get famous by taking down big tech after its year-long inquiry. It seems the most prominent bipartisanship in Washington to expand government power rather than reduce it. So here's another article if you want to read into it. But again, there's a lot of, it's a game, right? It's all about moving the pieces of the chessboard. And in order to understand the outcome, there's a lot of simulations that are being done in the background. There's many companies that run simulation software. There's game playing. There's a whole series of events that are running through what the different playouts are going to be. And we most recently became aware of this in the public when the Democrats did a war room scenario playing out all the different options they could come up with if, in fact, Biden didn't win the presidency, as they put it. And in every scenario they looked at, it came to civil war. Now, that's very, very interesting because I can outlay a whole variety of possible scenarios, and not one of mine includes civil war. So depending on what narrative you want to create is what you will peddle, apparently, on mainstream media and social media and through the movies. So here we go. Let's see how this circus plays out. This is Pink Glue presenting DOJ Steps Up, Google Antitrust Lawsuit. This is episode 143, and this is still October 20th.